On this episode of the John1911 Podcast, the truth about the Dick's AR-15 story, a World War I 1911, a selfish suicide, and Spiderman gets 105 years.
Okay, good morning, everybody. This is Marky and Freeze, and this is episode 93 of the John1911 Podcast. How was your night, Freeze?
Busy as hell, but yeah. A lot of thieving going on this week.
a lot of thieving.
Yep.
Here's a story on Fox News, I guess. Editor's picks. Woman breaks in the home, found taking bath and eating Cheetos. So I guess you were the only one with a busy night last night. Did you have any Cheeto thieves last night?
Hold on a second. She was eating Cheetos while she was in the bath?
That's what it says.
Wow, that takes kind of skill, I guess.
It does.
But, on the other hand, you don't have to worry about having orange hands when you're done.
Good point. That might be why she was taking a bath.
Well, see, I don't know. Cheetos in the bath. I mean, people are nuts.
They are nuts. Hey, we haven't talked about this, and I just didn't know if there was an update on it, because I didn't know how far it was going to go, but is there any more update on the possibility of breaking California up into 3 states? Is that for real?
I heard, man, I don't know, I want to say a couple weeks ago, could have been a month or so ago, I saw a short article about some, I guess they were state legislators in California, again, still talking about wanting to break it up into 3 separate areas. Now, I don't know if it's going anywhere. I don't think it's going to amount to anything personally, but I sure wouldn't be sad to see it. But the truth is, there's not a Democrat out there that's going to support breaking California up, because California is their power base with the 50 electoral college votes, or 55, I believe. Yeah, I don't know how many. I don't recall off the top of my head how many they have, but they're looking at. But this is interesting. They're looking, when you look at California, like California makes this argument that, we're the world's whatever large economy just because of our state. Whatever.
But they are. I mean, they are. They have a bigger GDP than most, probably a lot of countries around the world. However,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But here's the thing: the way they're looking at the map for California to break it up, because what it is, there's all these conservatives that live out in like farm country or Northern California, and they're sick and tired of all this crap, and they're talking now in Northern California, NorCal, SoCal, and then on a sliver of land that's basically on the coast that goes from Sacramento down through L.A. So basically, you'll get Silicon Valley in San Francisco, and L.A. is part of this of like California, but a bulk of the landmass of California would turn into 2 Republican states, and I'm real curious.
Yeah.
I'm real curious like how much GDP is left. Because, San Francisco, here's the thing. Long Beach, San Francisco, San Diego, and Silicon Valley, I would imagine those 4 things are the bulk of California's GDP.
Yes, very true. I mean, yeah, that's where all your shipping ports are, your technical companies, but Northern California is, that's where they grow all the vegetables and the grapes for the wine. And, whatever chunk gets Napa Valley in the wine area, hey, man, I'll tell you what, the wine industry in California brings in a lot of cash.
It does. Farming in California is huge. It's a huge farming state.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, there's still, there's still industry there. There's still money there.
It would be interesting to do a comparison. How many farmers are in, quote, Northern California, at least according to this map, and how many of them are in, like, Ohio and Indiana combined? I bet you Northern California's got more farmers and farms in it than Ohio and Indiana combined.
I don't know about that.
And I'm saying that to make the point. There's a lot of farms in Ohio and Indiana.
I know. I mean, Indiana is pretty much all farm, except for the major cities.
So is Ohio. I mean, if you're outside of Cincinnati, Dayton, Columbus, Cleveland, and Akron, and I guess maybe Youngstown, it's all farm.
Yeah.
So it just would be interesting. But this seems to be, possibly getting more traction. And did you hear so Moonbeam, Trump's putting troops on the border, and Moonbeam's like, we're not doing that. We're sanctuary, whatever their argument is.
Yeah.
And it looks like, I guess there was a poll taken in California, and a majority of the people that live in California favor, closing the border and deporting criminals, and deporting these criminal aliens. And now Moonbeam is coming out, and they're he's like, well, we've agreed, if the government pays for it, we've agreed to send troops to the border to stop what they call it, transnational criminal activity. And
whatever.
Seriously, that's what they called it. And I'm like,
seriously,
you guys are just fucking Moonbeam. And it's interesting because, I mean, it's interesting, in some weird way, Trump's flipping California. But, I think this Northern California, Southern California thing is a real viable option because a lot of people, especially in our community, they make a lot of throwaway comments like, let California secede, let them be their own whatever. And the truth is, imagine if all these people that live in California, that live in these like Northern Cal, Southern Cal, what they're showing it as, quote, blue areas, all of a sudden you wake up one day and you don't live in America anymore. Oh, dude, it would be fucking war. So instead of having California break away, let liberal bullshit California turn into its own 53rd state, and then let NorCal, SoCal be Americans, and then, liberal California, if they want to, if they want to spend all their money on stupid shit, let them spend all their money on stupid shit. I think this is a really interesting. I personally think this is a really good. I think this is going to go somewhere. I think in our lifetime we could see California break apart. Because if California doesn't break apart, California's going to secede from the Union.
I don't know about the breaking apart. I personally, I'd like to see it. I don't know how well that's going to fly because, like I said, I don't see the Democrats backing that at all.
They may not have a choice. If most of the state is pushing for it and they get a referendum and it goes to Congress, they approve it, and there's a national, because don't all the states have to vote on it? Don't all the states have to vote to allow other states into the Union? Isn't it like a constitutional vote? Yeah,
I'm not familiar with, there is a procedure. I'm not really familiar with the exact procedure, but yeah, there is actually an official procedure to do that, yes.
Wait a minute, you mean you're not prepared for a last-minute constitutional question at 10 o'clock in the morning?
No, I'm not. Not today.
But here's the thing. If you look at the map, California, it's got its 2 Democratic senators, and then its Democratic whatever members. But this would produce 4 Republican senators and probably a significant number of Republican congressmen. And here's the thing. Individual Congress districts, if they happen to be in some of these blue areas, they'd still be red. They'd still be Democrat. It's interesting. I think this has legs.
Yeah, but again, if it's got legs, it's short legs. I just don't see the Democrats. I see them doing everything possible to prevent this from happening because, again, California as a whole is 55 electoral college votes that go to the Democrats, period. And if they break it up, they're going to lose a lot of electoral college votes. I mean, they'll still keep a bulk of it because, the sliver down the coast is still going to be Democrat, and that's where a bulk of the population is. So they'll still get a fair amount of electoral college votes out of it, but it won't be 55. And, again, when you go into a presidential election, the reason, like Ohio and Florida and South Carolina, is so important for the Republicans is because you need those to offset California, which is a given. And the Democrats go into a presidential election automatically with 55 electoral college votes. I mean, what was the exception to the rule? Ronald Reagan.
Did Reagan carry California?
Reagan carried California, but he was also the governor of California, and he was very well known,
very popular in California.
Yeah, he was very well liked in California. But with the exception of Reagan, I don't know when the last Republican carried California. So I mean that's huge. And as far as secession goes, I don't see that happening. There's no way the federal government's going to let California secede.
Well,
not going to happen.
From a military and geopolitical standpoint, we've discussed that over here. One of the problems with that is, forget the machinations of getting to it. Let's just say we don't even have a battle. We're like, let them go. The problem is, even if it was like the sliver of California, or like, not the entire state, but just the sliver of California, because the reality is, if California goes to secede, a bunch of Californians would be like, "Fuck you, we're Americans." It'd be like West Virginia. It would literally, bam, it'd be like West Virginia. But you have a lot of, you mentioned this, a lot of port cities in Southern California, and a lot of trade comes in the Southern California. If that becomes, or the coastline, that lower third, if it becomes a foreign country, you're going to see a lot of that trade instantly move either north or south to different ports. That's going to decimate the GDP of what these traditional Californians think they've got a lock on all this money. But the other problem is these people are so crazy that what they would do, because they need money, they would immediately start taking money from, say, like China, and they would literally sell basing rights to the Chinese Navy, and the Chinese Navy would have a port on the U.S. quote West Coast with nuclear weapons. I mean, that's how crazy these people are, and that would immediately happen.
Yeah,
you really can't let California secede.
And that's why the federal government would never allow that to happen. California will not secede from the union. It's not going to happen.
They're so crazy. They would do stupid shit like that.
Yeah, they probably would.
Yeah,
and they would need money because look, this goes back to California, having a higher GDP than most countries. That's all fine, well, and good, but they're broke. They have no freaking money.
Mm-hmm.
They make a lot of money. They bring in a lot of money, and that's the thing that the people, the liberals from California, they like to throw around their GDP, but they never want to talk about their horrendous debt. And the thing is, if they broke away from the United States of America, California could not survive on its own. It doesn't matter if they have a higher GDP than half of Europe combined. They can't survive because they have no money. They're freaking broke.
Well, one of the big things that California is facing, and I don't, again, we're not a financial podcast, we're a gun podcast, guns and politics, I guess, is California has a huge problem with their pension plans. And there is a national kind of like FDIC for pension plans, and California is banking on getting bailed out on their pensions. And if they secede from the United States, that alone would break them. And that's coming.
Mm-hmm. Right along the same lines, and I haven't heard anything about this in quite some time, but the state of Illinois is broke. And they have, like, their pensions for their state employees, basically, they've leveraged these pensions, and I'm probably going to get some of this wrong. It's been a while since I was reading about it, but they leverage their pensions on the stock market, which,
that tells me they were spending the money already and they were desperate.
Yeah. And, in the stock market during the Barack Obama years was not necessarily the greatest stock market we've ever had. But they were actually talking about there were state representatives in Illinois talking about divvying up Illinois and giving it to splitting it up into 3 or 4 parts and giving it to neighboring states and like disbanding the entire state, because every single cent of tax revenue that the state of Illinois collects is not enough to cover the nut on what they owe to the pensioners. It's interesting.
I haven't really heard about the idea of dissolving the state.
I haven't heard anything lately, but I think here's the reason I haven't heard anything lately. They couldn't cover their nut because everything was leveraged on the stock market. But as we talked, I think, in our last podcast, the last year with Donald Trump, the stock market has been amazingly great. So I think that might have helped them out a bit and kind of quelled the talk of dissolving the state so they can pay their people.
Yeah.
But they were talking, it's like every penny garnered from taxpayers isn't enough to cover what we have to pay out in pensions. So that means that we have zero money to pay any current employees to invest in road repair or, any type of infrastructure. They were literally broken in the freaking hole.
Well,
I'm sure they still are.
Breaking up the state like that and absorbing it in other states is a problem because all right, who's going to take Chicago?
No,
Indiana?
No.
Is Indiana going to turn into a Democratic state?
Well,
they would
here's
have to go
the thing.
to Wisconsin or something.
They even talked about that. They said, well, Chicago would get absorbed, into Indiana because, Fort Wayne is pretty much just a suburb of Chicago anyway. But here's the thing. Indiana was saying, we don't want it. We don't want to absorb the debt, and they were talking about, well, we can divvy it up and these other states can have this and this and that. And the other states are going, no, we don't want, it's like,
people
why do
would
we
be interested maybe in the southern part of the state, but nobody wants Chicago.
Exactly. So, but again, another communist state, it's dead ass fucking broke.
Okay, you know what? I'm going to say this, and then we're going to get off this because we've got to talk about some fun stuff along these crazy liberals. Charlize Theron, she's from South Africa. She's white. I guess she has some black kids. She's, California liberal, whatever. I'm even sure she's a U.S. citizen. She might be. She made some comment like, I don't feel like I wouldn't take my kids in the certain parts of America and I'm thinking about leaving because of the racism. And everybody's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And she's backed off of that because it was kind of a shitty thing to say. But when I heard it, I was thinking, yeah, the only part of America that you would be afraid to take your kids into is in California.
Yeah.
And see, I was like, yeah, go. You're talking about California, lady. You're not talking about Ohio, Indiana, Missouri, Wyoming, Nevada, North South Carolina. You're talking about your shithole place where you live, and you're projecting that shit onto us because your state is a fucking wreck and a third world shithole.
Yeah.
And nobody's saying that, but I'm saying it. So hey, you'll find.
Well, I mean, it's true though.
Yeah, it is true. But let's talk about something fun. And I saw this, and I immediately was like, ooh, I got to run this by Freeze. It's going to be a World War II history, Boys from Brazil Nazi update.
Oh, God, I hope I get this right.
No, it's not a question. It's not a question. Well, I was going to start with, did you hear about the Nazi sub that they found?
Yes, I did. Yes, I sure did. It was supposedly bringing like stolen artifacts and Nazi officials to South America when it went down. So here's the let me set up the back end of the story here. So what it was is at the end of the war, like literally 2 days, I guess, before the Nazi Germany surrendered, there was a German submarine that sailed, and all the German naval bases are up north. It sailed away from Germany, and it was working its way through like the straits, kind of like near like Norway and all that. And It was at the end of the war, I guess Germany had some really interesting and big submarines. They only had a few of them, though. And those submarines later became designs that Russia, China, and the U.S. and Britain and maybe France all kind of picked up and used them as like their next generation, kind of like how they did the machine guns. They kind of pushed submarine technology. Well, this submarine was a big-ass submarine, and it wasn't sailing towards Germany. It was sailing away from Germany. It was apparently spotted by a British bomber, and they bombed it, and they never found it. And the theory was that it was it had Hitler in it, and a bunch of Nazi gold, and a bunch of these people supposedly never caught. And this thing could sail underwater for, I guess, many weeks. And their theory was that it made it to South America, and that's where all the boys from Brazil and all that shit came from. Yeah.
So that's the story. That's been the rumor about the submarine since 1945. That's what.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there's some goofy bullshit show on the History Channel about, I don't know, finding Hitler or some crap, and I even think they've talked about, where this particular submarine dropped Hitler off and all this kind of crap. So yeah, I mean that shit's been going around forever.
Yeah. So they have discovered what happened to the submarine, and that's what made the news. Did you read that?
You mean what actually happened to the submarine?
Yeah, the bomber attacked the sub, and the sub was never seen again. The bomber reported they think they killed the sub, but they never found it. So the theory was that Hitler and all these people made it to South America. The reason the story's in the news is they found the sub, and it's in like 190 feet of water, about 3 or 9 miles, 10 nautical miles, or no, wait a minute, where is it at? They found it right off the coast of Norway.
Yeah.
They sunk it, and it's like, well, there goes that story. There's all those boys from. I mean, like, dude, you and I grew up with like all those movies. They always talked about all these Nazis that made it to South America, and like the CIA was reconstituted, by the Nazis in South America, and that's really where all that stuff comes from. Like, it's crazy talk.
Yeah, well, and I mean, a lot of Nazis did make it to South America. I mean, you know, the Israelis rounded up a few of the big ones, in the 60s and the 70s.
They tried them and executed them.
Yeah. I mean, you know, a lot of Nazis did, but most of those went through Southern Europe and Italy, and, well, you know, the Vatican helped a lot of them get to South America, you know, so... but that's a whole nother story before, you know, I piss off all the Catholics out there.
Oh, you know. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'll tell you what, you get Roger talking about that. Oh, my God.
Well, I mean, it's true. It's historical fact. And I mean, it's an ugly part of the Vatican history that they don't like to talk about. But, you know, hey, they made a deal with the devil and they had to pay up, and history's not going to judge them fairly. So since history's not going to judge them fairly, they just block it out of history. You know, kind of like the Democrats. If you erase history, then the bad stuff never happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's major problems with the thing is, you know, before we had the communist pope, before we had the communist pope, who's the current pope, we had the Nazi pope, and then before the Nazi pope, we had the saint that was a pope. So, you know, we're kind of like running the gamut in the last three popes: saint, Nazi, communist. So, and I'm Catholic, and I can say it. So, hey, you know, this is just kind of a light and easy podcast, and guess we'll talk about it. You know, a bunch of people have been dying lately. You know, Barbara Bush died. I kind of liked her, and then Ermey passed away. And you know, who didn't like Ermey? And
if you didn't like that guy, man, you had problems.
Yeah, I mean those scenes from what the hell was that movie? Where he was the
Full Metal Jacket. Yeah.
Yeah, that movie was huge. I mean, I remember that movie came out, and at my age, when did that movie come out?
Oh, man. Yeah,
early 80s?
No. Early 90s. It was in the 90s.
Was it? I thought it was.
Oh, yeah.
I thought that movie came out before I graduated high school.
Oh, I don't think so.
Okay. You Googling it?
I will. No, what I was going to say is, I was most impacted by Harry Anderson's death.
Is that Night Court dude?
Yeah, that's the Night Court dude.
Yeah, I literally, when I saw that, I was like, why do I know this guy? It doesn't ring a bell.
I mean, other than Night Court, I don't know if the guy did anything. I know he was like a stand-up comedian and stuff, but I liked the guy. He was funny.
Yeah. Well, Full Metal Jacket came out in 1987.
Okay.
Yep, I was like a freshman. Because I remember, like a lot of our dads, like all of our dads would watch that movie, and they would all be like the drill instructor just, I mean, like, you know, there were some reports that some guys were so upset reliving their boot camp experience watching that movie, they had to walk out of the movie.
Well, you see, I'm a little older than you, and I had the same experience, but the movie was called The Deer Hunter. You know, it's like, you know,
movie. Oh my God. All of our parents watched that movie. I hated that movie.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't matter if you hated it, but I mean, that, you know, the same thing that you're saying happened with dads with Full Metal Jacket is the same thing that happened, you know, when I was growing up with The Deer Hunter.
Oh my God. But
The Deer Hunter was like,
about that movie.
You know, it was like 10 years earlier.
Dude, if I see one more scene of somebody playing Russian roulette and trying to make it like dramatic, I'm like, whatever. I'm over it. I don't care. I mean, it's just, you know, I'm so jaded because, you know, when that movie came out, I was a child, and I got so sick and tired of it. I got so sick and tired of, you know, well, my parents won't stop talking about this movie. Ugh. You know, so, you know, you never think anything's cool when you're a kid, but unless it was like Rambo. So Rambo was cool, Like, see, when you're a kid, Full Metal Jacket's about all this angst and all of this confliction and, resolving all these issues and, who you are and where you've been and where you're going. And John Rambo was the hand grenade goes off, kills everybody within 10 square feet except John Rambo, and it's just a different time. So oh my God, I wasn't prepared for the Deer Hunter.
Let me when Rambo, the first the first movie came out, God, what year did that come out? Shoot.
I'll Google it real quick. I don't even remember.
God, I don't remember. It was early 80s, I think.
Oh, I'm sure it was. It came out 1982.
Yeah, there you go. When First Blood, I guess, was actually the name of the movie. See, I had read the book before the movie came out.
Was it First Blood?
Yeah, the movie was actually called First Blood. It wasn't Rambo. Rambo came with the sequels.
Well, I think the book was called First Blood. But yes. I think the first movie was called Rambo.
No, it was not. The first movie was called First Blood. Look it up. IMDb it. And I liked the movie. It wasn't as good as the book. I mean, but it was a good movie. I mean, for what it was, I was a kid, I was younger and I enjoyed it. So then all of a sudden they come out with Rambo First Blood Part 2.
Of course they did.
And that piece of trash was so full of shit and garbage. I don't know how many Rambo movies they're up to. I don't know, 16, 17, 23, whatever. I have never seen a Rambo movie after Rambo 2.
Yeah.
Because the second movie was such garbage, it was just like, yeah, okay, I don't think a lot of Sly Stallone is an actor anyway. As a matter of fact, the only movie that I really liked Sly Stallone in is a movie that no one's ever heard of. So,
Well, see, here's the thing. Rambo for you, at least First Blood Part 2, and there's a bunch of kids listening to us right now that are like, they're like, whatever, these old ass movies. And I'm going to say something that most of them are going to fall out of their chairs because you've seen this movie, you've talked about it, everybody talks about these movies. I've never seen them. I never will see them. Not that I hate them, but I'm just not interested in it. And there's the John Wick movies. I've never seen a John Wick movie. I've never seen anything because apparently John Wick is this like shoot 'em up movie. But see, to me, like gun handling skills are important, and it's something that I work on and have worked on for a long, long time. And so my view of gun handling skills is grounded in the reality of me trying to do certain things. And so like it's like it'd be like maybe like a guy who practices with his samurai sword watching one of these samurai movies would just be like want to vomit. I have no interest in seeing some of this stuff because I just don't I have nothing against it. And I think probably First Blood Part 2 was just a big kill fest for you and you just weren't interested in it. So
I mean,
okay, wait a minute. If you didn't like First Blood Part 2, answer me this, because we weren't friends when we were kids. We didn't know each other.
No.
In my group of friends, when First Blood came out, none of us were old enough. We had guns. But, like we weren't adults. We couldn't buy our own guns. We had them, from our parents and, whatever. It was what it was. But we all wanted the big knife. That's when the big knife exploded. As a matter of fact,
they're called Rambo knives. No.
You're right. They are called Rambo knives.
Yes. Yeah, they're called Rambo knives because that started the trend for the big freaking knives. The biggest knife I've ever owned was a Bowie knife. And I've never actually owned a Rambo knife because Knives. Look, I'm not a knife guy. I mean, I carry a cheap folding lock blade for cutting string, cardboard, wire, or whatever. I don't have, these bullshit Benchmade SOG knives that are so freaking expensive. I don't want to use as a pry bar or a screwdriver because it cost me, 3 days pay to buy. And I know all these guys, who take pictures of their EDC crap, who have their 14 guns, 62 magazines, and 18 $300 knives on them are all full of shit. But that's okay. And I know a lot of knife guys that collect knives and use them and carry them around, and that's fine. But again, no, I mean, I never was into knives. I mean, I just practical utilitarian knives. I was never interested in goofy fantasy blades.
So let me interrupt you here. So let me ask you a question that will prove a point. So in all the years that you've hunted on the farm in Indiana, and all the years that you have done the chainsaw parties, and all the time that you have spent working on our range, an old farm that we're converting to the 1,000-yard range, you have never, ever, ever in your life in all those years been out away from a building, a house, a vehicle, and had a need to open up your knife, pull out your cable saw and saw something with your cable saw back and forth. If you needed to saw something, you telling me you walked back to the barn and got a saw like a normal person?
Yes. Actually, I just walked over to my man truck and opened up my man tool bag and took out the proper tool to do the proper job. Because that's called being a real man and not a fantasy douche.
See, when we were kids, dude, I will never forget as a kid when Rambo opened up the back of his knife and there was all this shit in it. And
sutured up his own freaking wound. It's
he had like a compass in it and all that, and it was just like, whoa, that's awesome. I had no idea. And, it's like every knife had to have you keep matches in it, and so we kept buying all these cheap ass knives. And of course, that was when I learned the end all be all knife as a kid. When the Rambo knives came out, was the Buckmaster knife, and I never got one because I couldn't afford it, and eventually I grew up. But it was like this knife. It was all, we talked about it before. It's all stainless steel and a metal handle and all this stuff. And
hollow handle and all that shit, yeah.
You could open up the back, and it had a compass in it and all this stuff. And I even heard that because it was all metal, even the compass would demagnetize itself. So, but you could pull out these metal tongs, these metal teeth out of the back of it, and screw it into the guard, and then you could throw the knife and use it as a grappling hook. And I just
yeah. Yeah, as a matter of fact, wasn't that even marketed as a Navy SEAL knife or some shit like that?
Dude, it could have been. All that shit's all. I mean, it was that knife. I remember as a kid, that knife was $100, and it was holy shit, $100.
That was the holy grail you had to have.
That was the holy grail.
I mean, even back when I was, humping and pelling and just doing a lot of stuff I did, again, utilitarian. I mean, hell, a lot of times when I was, up in Canada, up in the bush country and stuff, I carried a switchblade in my back pocket. Of course, those were the days you get away with a lot of that stuff,
apparently you go to prison, you get caught with a knife in London now.
Well, so much for buttering your toast.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, and now they have, back in the 80s and 90s, you used an old switchblade. Now, knife technology is a lot better. You have auto openers. You have assisted opening knives, which are much better quality. Oh, yeah. And those are practical, useful knives because you can open them one-handed and use them if need be, It's just, Like I said, I know I've been hard on the knife guys, and there's nothing wrong with having a good quality knife, but look, I've always been the guy, who carries the Schrade or the Parker. Well, okay, that's going back. Yeah, they haven't made Parkers in years. But, like my hunting knife. My hunting knife is my skinning knife. The knife I've skinned countless and countless deers with. I've gutted them and skinned them. It's a blackjack. Now, in all fairness, it is an expensive knife, but it's a drop tip folder that has a 4-inch blade on it, I think.
Yeah.
I carry it in a sheath when I'm hunting, and it skins deer just fine. It's small enough when I have to go in there and gut the deer out. It does the job. And, again, it's practical. It's light. It doesn't take up any space. It works for me, and it's again, I don't see the sense in having a knife if I won't use that knife as a pry bar, screwdriver, or chisel. And in all fairness,
what you're basically saying is there will never be a John 1911 sponsored knife because they don't like us.
Well, we could, but it would have to be made in China and have an MSRP on it of $5.
Yeah. I mean, like
no,
and knife is like $30. Yeah. I carry a $30 knife. And it's got a 2-inch blade on it, and that's the only knife I carry.
Look, there's great knives out there. Benchmade makes a great knife. SOG. Look, there's a ton of great knives. Spyderco knives are they're great knives. But again, if you have a knife that you're carrying in your pocket or on your belt, and you won't use that knife as a pry bar or a chisel, then I suggest you stop carrying that knife because it's not a practical knife.
I have a good way of actually conveying this idea, and I'll use a movie reference because I haven't seen that many movies, but I've seen this movie, and I think it will actually resonate with a lot of our listeners. Because, like I've carried a lot of stuff, especially for work, and one of my policies was I need to be able to throw it away quickly in an emergency. And there was a scene from one of these movies, one of these bank robber movies, and they were talking, and I hate to say it like this, but it's just to prove the point. They were talking about, like, these bank robbers being involved with women. And one character was telling the other character, I never get into, like, a relationship unless I do not, anything I can't walk away from 30 seconds flat, if I see the heat coming from around the corner. If you carry a knife in an emergency, you literally can't throw it in a trash can or get rid of it, like, right now, dump the knife. I question whether you actually are serious about carrying a knife because, I carry knives. I've had some stuff in some pretty crazy places, and there always is the understanding you have to be able to lose it, including a gun. And so if you can't take that knife and be like, fuck, throw it in the river, throw it in a garbage can, lose it, pry it, whatever, I don't know. I question. I think it's more of kind of like a fashion statement probably than practicality. And there's nothing wrong with that because the truth is most money's made in fashion, not in function in these kinds of markets. So speaking of fantasy and fake bullshit, we're going to talk about another person that died because we used to joke about him all the time because our joke was that he was his business was subsidized by the government to keep crazy people under control at night. Art Bell died.
Yeah. What is that? Coast to Coast?
He was on Coast to Coast Radio.
Yeah, buddy. Man, I love that guy.
You worked thirds. I worked thirds for 19 years. And this is before satellite radio, and I basically could listen to 3 things on the radio at night. I could listen to the BBC World Service. I can listen to the trucking people, or I could listen to Art Bell, and that motherfucker was crazy.
Art Bell single-handedly is responsible for selling more rolls of Reynolds Wrap than anyone.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man.
I tell you what, I remember he was talking, he had this guy on, and, because I have listened to his show, Because, at night, before the internet, there wasn't a whole lot to do. Like you just, if you had the radio on.
There weren't smartphones. There wasn't the internet. It was,
Yeah, if you were a doctor, you had a pager. So he had this guy on, and it was like an exercise in how people can manipulate you into believing shit that's not real. And so he has this guy on. I'll never forget this. And I'm listening to this, and I'm just like, you are such a piece of shit. And this guy was supposedly somehow connected to, like, area, is it 52? What's the
51? Area 51.
Okay, I was, holy shit, I screwed that up. So
that's where all the spaceships are at.
Oh yes, I mean, dude, I think at one point, he probably lived in Nevada when he passed away. So anyway, he had this guy on. This guy was supposedly like a former employee of this Area 51, Groom Lake. I call it red flag. Whatever, the Air Force, all that shit out there. And he would not say who the guy was or what his credentials were or his rank or his education or his job titles. So you never could tell who this dude was. But this dude was telling crazy-ass stories. I mean, like aliens, like, put mayonnaise on bread and just crazy shit. But when Art Bell would talk about him to his audience, he would go, I can't tell you who this guy is, but you can take it from me. He's highly, highly credentialed. Highly credentialed. And he always said, highly. This person is highly credentialed. And I just remember listening to this going, you are such a fuckface. It's like, because I've dealt with liars before, and I've dealt with manipulative people before. I have a fair amount of experience with that. And I recognized a lot of that in Art Bell, and it personally really would grate me, probably not, I don't know, like I probably got more pissed off about Art Bell than I should have. And I recognize that because, like that's where you and I would joke, like Art Bell gets a stipend from the government to keep the crazy people in the house at night listening to the radio. Because it was like, if he wasn't on the radio to keeping crazy people talking on the phone, they'd be out causing us problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was just like, yeah. Dude, I probably shouldn't say this, but, and I could have this wrong, because I haven't done any research on this, so I could be mistaken, but I seem to recall Art Bell had some kind of incident that happened to his family. And again, I could be wrong, but I want to tell the story. Like, all of a sudden, he left the radio, he left his show, he moved to the Philippines. He was living in the Philippines where he left the country. And I don't know if he had, like, a son, and, like, somebody, like, found out. Like, I don't know if they found out who he was or where he lived and they targeted him, or whether it happened to be random, but there was like some crazy story about, again, this may not be true, and I'm not going to Google it to find out, but there was some crazy story like maybe one of his kids was raped and given HIV. I mean, it was just like, he had all these crazy kind of things going on, all this drama, and he was on the run. He was the original From the Secret Undisclosed Location guy. That, you know what I mean? It was like you never knew what he was kind of like, he was the Alex Jones of his day. Seriously, he was like Alex Jones. Yeah. I never thought about it like that, but he was Alex Jones.
Yeah, no, I never really thought of it that way either. But yeah, it's pretty much, that's pretty true, really. That's a pretty good analogy.
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, most people didn't know that because they had jobs and went to bed at night.
Well, and the thing is, there's probably a ton of people out there who don't even really know who the hell he is.
Yeah, because I don't think he really popped up on the internet.
Well, and again, like you said, unless you're a night owl, I mean, if you're a daywalker, then, then, you never listen to the guy, I mean, it's like how many non-truckers don't, who live a normal life during the day know who the trucking bozo is. Or was, because the new trucking bozo is a joke. But
well, see, but now the thing is with things. I mean, look at this podcast. What you and I are doing now used to take millions and tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars, and you had to have, FCC licenses and broadcast towers, and all this infrastructure and access to satellites and all that, and now you and I, we do this podcast. There could be some trucker right now, 3 o'clock in the morning. He downloads this podcast and listens to it heading westbound on I-70 to Denver.
Yeah. I mean, that's true.
Mm-hmm. It's all different now. And, it's just the crazy guys. Speaking of crazy, I mean, we're kind of just catching up. We have to talk about something gun before we get to the end of this. Dude, you brought this up. The guy that set himself on fire in Central Park.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Trying to reduce the carbon footprint by setting himself on fire. Wow. That guy.
I don't think he was in Central Park, but he killed himself. Guy kills himself. Set himself. It wasn't Central Park.
It wasn't? I thought it was Central Park.
It was suicide in New York.
It was in New York City somewhere. I'm pretty sure.
It's called Prospect Park.
Prospect Park. Okay.
Yeah, actually, and I had a buddy of mine up there in law enforcement. He actually sent. Yeah, actually, I've got photographs. I've got uncensored photographs from that. So anyway, here's basically what it is. This guy, he's a lawyer, and apparently he was a very successful and very accomplished gay rights lawyer. It's my understanding. That's one of his big areas. Is he practiced.
Well, yeah, he defended my gay rights.
Okay, so which is all fine. I think gay people should be able. I mean, because if they don't defend themselves, somebody's going to hurt them. You know what I mean? I got no problems with that. But
the crazy thing is, I mean, I didn't know anything about this guy, but I had heard of him because he's been involved with some pretty famous, court cases and stuff over the years. I mean, he was a pretty prominent lawyer.
Apparently, I didn't. That's being because I was like, who is this dude? So but he was also apparently a big environmentalist.
Mm-hmm.
And so what he did is he decided to set himself on fire. And he wrote a note or he did some stuff, but basically in protest to a greenhouse, global warming, he set himself on fire. Basically, I can't live in a world like this and, whatever. So what he did is he went out to some public park, in an area where people walk. He went out there at some point, doused himself in some kind of accelerant, laid down in the grass and set himself on fire and burned himself up. And then, his argument was, it's almost kind of like, you remember the movie The Seventh Seal? The guy that he thinks people are going to talk about me forever, and what I've done. And this guy, it's really interesting, and I think probably a lot of people haven't gotten this kind of analysis on this. Guy set himself on fire, gay rights lawyer, environmentalist. Used an accelerant to burn himself up because of global warming. That's kind of ironic. There's all that kind of stuff going on. But what a lot of people don't understand is this guy, he's obviously mentally ill, okay? I mean,
obviously.
There's a mental there's a character flaw in his personality. Anytime a living being commits suicide that isn't for, like to save another person, what I mean? But again, in his mind, he was like, for a greater cause, like he was committing suicide for us all. This guy,
dude, first off, let me say, if you're going to commit suicide, I can't think of a more horrendous way of killing yourself than lighting yourself on fire.
Well, that may be played in a part of his motivation, because here's the thing. He's already out of the news cycle.
Oh, yeah.
And, we're talking about it because we haven't done a podcast in a little bit. And it's kind of interesting. And I find it interesting because I have a lot of experience with, like, crazy mentally ill people. And so this guy, the message I'm trying to convey to people is, this guy literally thinks that his story is going to live forever. That, like, this is going to be this great big event, and we're all going to be talking about it. Maybe they'll name bridges after him. Maybe there'll be some movement or whatever. He has this delusions of grandeur, messianic kind of thing, because he's crazy. And and the thing is, when you're dealing with crazy people, the most important thing to understand is not why they do what they do, because you'll never be able to make all those connections, just to be able to figure out, if you can figure out what they're going to do next, because you figured out what kind of crazy they are. And see, this guy, when he did this, and he did this in this park, and all these people were like little kids and strollers, and people were like, oh my God, Mommy, what is that? He's so selfish, so self-centered, and so batshit crazy. He doesn't care about anybody else. He cares about himself and his image and his idea of winning. And it's literally like, I see a selfish prick when I see this.
Well, let me tell you why this guy's a failure and he's out of the news cycle. Because when he was thinking this through, he got his little cart together and wrote his little note and had his accelerant, and decided where he was going to do it to get the biggest impact, or what he thought would be the biggest impact, and so forth. But what he forgot was to get a time-life photographer. Because the only reason we know about the Buddhist monk who set himself on fire in Saigon, I think it was Saigon, during the Vietnam War, was because there was a time-life photographer there that caught a picture of this dude up in flames and blazing.
It was an amazing photograph.
It was. It was an amazing photograph. But my point is, if he would have had a photographer there to take a picture of him in mid-blaze, he'd still be in the news cycle. And you know damn good and well that's the truth.
Yeah. But, it's hard to get other people to go along with your crazy.
Well, I mean, you know what, though? There's a Washington Post or a Time Life or hell, at least a National Enquirer photographer out there. It'd be like, shit, yeah, I'll be there. Light up, bitch. I'll take your picture. There's going to be some freaking photographer that'll be like, I'll sell this bad boy for some jingle.
Here comes my Pulitzer Prize. Yeah. So, but I just thought that was, nobody's talking about, this, it made the story, because I'm sure, I don't know this, but I am sure for about 30 seconds, when they figured out who this dude was, they were like, oh my God, was it a hate crime? Oh my God, was it, whatever. But, when
they realized he was just a wingnut environmentalist who torched himself, they're like, yeah, whatever. And it's out of the news cycle. It's no big deal.
See, and that's, the two things here. This guy's so selfish and so crazy. This is one thing I've learned about really crazy people, especially if they're smart, and they can be so dangerous, is because they're smart and they're convincing, and they're manipulative, and they're just, they're functioning at a very high level. And a lot of times what a lot of victims of these people don't understand is they refuse to accept the concept, well, this has to be true, or this has to be what this person says, or this is going to go this way because they're not going to get away with it, or this will end badly otherwise, and not, the same person would do that. A truly crazy person will take you with them if they're crazy. Mm-hmm. And that's something I think the average person never truly understands, because a lot of them are insulated in their lives from dealing with truly dangerously mentally ill people. And, I saw this and I was like, I know immediately what I'm fucking looking at here. I was like, holy fuck. I'll bet you there's more to the story than even, because this is so crazy. He's not alone. There's people.
Oh, I don't know if there's a bunch of people involved in it, but I'd say there probably is more to the story, but we're not going to know what that story is because no one cares. At the end of the day, no one cares.
I don't believe for 1 second he got up, picked up a can of lighter fluid, walked out, and set himself on fire. And here's the thing. See, these kinds of people, especially when they're selfish like this, they want other people to know. There's a lot of work. There's forethought. I bet you he sent letters to people. I bet he was like giving away possessions or having if you go back and look, there's going to be, this kind of crazy just doesn't just blink happen. Just like the kid that shot up the school in Florida, everybody had a shit attack about. That just people don't just randomly snap. That's fake bullshit.
Oh.
There's a lot more to the story than the 5 minutes it was in the news cycle. And I wish I lived in New York or had more connections with NYPD, because I would love to know the back investigation on this one. I'd love to know.
Yeah, and his little environmental sewing circle that he hung around with, all the other crazy wingnut environmentalists, and I guarantee you they probably talked about this. If they might have even known he was going to do it, because because they're all just as freaking crazy.
Yeah. Okay, we got to get some gun stuff in here because we just have to. Hey, I know you haven't seen it yet, but the latest of the secondhand showcase is up. It went up this morning. Secondhand showcase number 4, SHS04. You'll be proud of it. It's a 1918 production Colt 1911.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I figure you're going to want to look. I think it's 287,000 serial range.
Okay.
But I have to tell you, and I'll tell you this because we're talking. I did these videos at that gun store. And, I'm going through them and putting them up. Because it's not a video like that we shot on the ranges or in the armory. Because, again, we're going into somebody else's business. We're traveling. I think the videos are too dark. I think I need to bring more portable light with me. And I've done that. But also, I don't like the quality. I think I need to up to like maybe an HD. I think, especially because you're trying to look at the markings on this gun, and I think, I don't know if I like it. And I wonder if you'll notice it too, but I wonder if you would have noticed it before I said it. So when
maybe I haven't seen the video, but I will, I will obviously pay attention for that now that you pointed it out.
Yeah,
so,
I think it's a little too dark. So, and I think I need to up it a little bit. But and the reason is because it's such a valuable gun, desirable gun. You want to zoom in on it. People want to know what they're buying, if they're going to lay out the kind of cash, what's real, what's not, what's repop, what's original, yada yada yada. And I mentioned that because it reminded me of a story that you had told me a few weeks ago. A guy called you that from work. I think it's from work. And he goes, hey, man, somebody wants to sell me X model of 1911. Is this worth the price?
Yeah.
Tell the listeners this.
Okay,
story.
so a buddy of mine sends me a text. It's the middle of the night, and he's like,
you and I get these kinds of messages all the time from people.
Oh, yeah. So he texts me 2 pictures, and it's a Smith & Wesson 1911, and and one picture is, the right side of it, and the other picture is the left side of it. And he's like, guy I know selling this, and he's asking $600. He said, is it a good deal? And I look at it and I'm like, yeah, I told him, I said $600 is a pretty good deal. It's it's about MSRP on a Smith & Wesson 1911, and this was the CT model. Had Crimson Trace laser grips on it, and MSRP on it's around $850, $875, something like that.
Yeah.
And I said, yeah, $600. I said, it's not a steal, but as long as it's not been abused or anything or beat to hell and back, I said, and I said, pictures look pretty decent. I said, $600 is a good deal. I found out later talking to him, it also includes, like a Black Hawk style holster.
What are the Serpa holsters?
Yeah, like a Serpa holster. A couple boxes of ammo, and
don't get me started on the Serpa. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I know. And shit like that. So, and anyway, he's we're talking, he's just like, well, what about the laser grips? He's like, the guy said he paid $300 extra for the laser grips. And I laughed, out loud to myself, and I typed, I'm texting him at the time. I typed back, I said, he's lying to you. I said, the gun came with laser grips from the factory. He didn't pay extra to have those put on. I said, the MSRP is the price with the laser grips. And he's like, are you sure? And I'm like, well, look at the gun. I said, the slide says S&W 1911 CT. CT stands for Crimson Trace. And he's like, oh. I'm like, it is what it is. I said, the guy's bullshitting you. I said, it's still a decent deal, but I don't know if he's trying to convince you it's a super good deal because he paid an extra $300 for the gun. And actually, which is crazy, because if the guy paid sticker price, he showed me a picture later, because I had several conversations with him, of the box, with the, how they have the tag on the side with all the information, serial number, and the price they're selling it for. The price on the box was $900, which is higher than MSRP. That's insane. If he paid the $900 for it, the guy kind of got screwed, whatever dealer sold it to him. But whatever. So basically, he was trying to tell this guy that he paid $900 for the gun plus an extra $300 for the laser grips. So he was basically saying at $600, he's selling the gun for like half price. And I'm like, no, dude, no, not. I mean, So.
Yeah, and that's an example of where somebody can take a product, break it up, and then try to make more money and actually take advantage of a buyer. And I thought that was an interesting story that I think a lot of people need to be aware of.
Well,
but it's got the laser grip on it. That's another $300. No,
well,
not with that package. It's not.
And when we were talking later about it, he's like, well, if I went ahead and bought it, he said, I don't really like the laser grips. He said, he's like, I could probably take those off and sell them and just get a regular set of grips. And I'm like, well, I said, here's the problem with that. I said, you can. I said, and if you do that, I said I would take the Crimson Trace grips off, but put them in the box and save them. Don't get rid of them. I said, because if you ever go to sell that gun, again, the slide is marked CT, and if you don't have the CT with the gun, no one's going to give you anything for it.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and he's like, oh, okay, that's a good point too. You know, so you know.
Hey, I want to. It's just, you know, you need to know what you're buying, and you know, I hate to say that you can get ripped off in the gun world, but obviously you can. So, you know.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of having to, I actually, you know, this is coming. You didn't know it's coming in the podcast, but I told this to you last night. Because you know, you're not the world's biggest Glenn Beck fan. And, cause, you know, Glenn Beck is like the original anti-Trumper because he's gone. You didn't like him before Trump because he went full religious. And,
look, I mean, I in all fairness, I was a Glenn Beck fan many, many years ago. I mean, I still like Glenn Beck to a degree, don't get me wrong. I just can't watch the guy anymore. And it's not so much because he went full anti-Trump, which caused me much angst and anger. But the truth is, even back when he was still on Fox, when he started getting into this crazy religious phase and he started mixing his religion and politics together, it just turned me off. And it's like, you know, I agree with the guy politically, but man, I tell you what, you can take your religion and just shove it up your own ass. I don't want to hear about your crazy religious beliefs, and don't try to twist everything that's going on in politics today about some kind of apocalyptic religious event or religious reason why it's happening. And that's why I just stopped listening to the blowhard.
Yeah, you're, you know, I guess you and I, we both like Glenn Beck as the historian. We don't much care for Glenn Beck as the evangelist.
Exactly.
And you know what? And here's the thing. I don't think you and I are outliers in this. Because Glenn Beck, he was at CNN, then he went to Fox, then he left and took all this money. He started The Blaze and this big giant media thing, and he's got his cable channel and radio and all this different kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Well, apparently Glenn Beck's been hemorrhaging money for a couple years. And now he's been forced to sell his private jet. They're down to like 6 people in their main news body.
Is it? See, last I heard he had scaled down to like 20 or 25 people. They're down to 6.
I heard there might be more. There's more than 6, but like the main important people that run, like they control the content, the editorialization, and you know, and kind of make things run. I heard it's down to 6.
Well,
and he's down to sell his private jet.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but did I not tell you when about a year and a half ago at least, if not longer, when, you know, Glenn Beck was a Ted Cruz fan and an anti-Trump fan. And when Trump won the nomination, and instead of getting behind Trump, he still hated on Trump, tried to do anything he could to not get Trump elected. Did I not tell you then that he's cutting his own throat, and it's a bad, bad business model to go after?
Oh, he went, you know, I mean, he was like John Kasich. John Kasich is kind of like Hillary fucking Clinton. John Kasich is so crazy. He still, if you were going to the deepest recesses, John Kasich's the governor of Ohio, if you know what I'm talking about. If you were to go in the deepest recesses of his mind, he still probably believes in some little, like, retarded corner of his brain that somehow Donald Trump could be removed from being president and the Republicans can make him president. Glenn Beck is
now, as crazy as that sounds, if you really know John Kasich, there's a lot of truth to that statement.
And Glenn Beck is not dissimilar. It's like, Glenn, stop. Stop hitting yourself in the head with the brick. But Jesus, bam. And it's just like, Jesus does not want you to hit yourself in the head with a brick, dude. Stop it. You know, and it's just, and it's just like, you know, Jesus shows up and is like, stop it, dude. Stop it.
Well, look. Glenn Beck's magical underwear may protect him from the devil, but it sure as hell didn't protect his jet from the auction block.
Oh, dude, terrible. Terrible.
I know it's terrible, but it's true.
Yeah.
Actually, maybe it's only half true. I don't know if magical underwear protects you from the devil or not. I just made that up.
Speaking of half true, you sent me this the other day, and I immediately was like, that is bullshit. That is fake fucking news. That is not how that fucking's working. And
what did I send? I send you so much shit. I mean, what did I send you?
Dix was talking about destroying all those ARs. Remember Dick's Sporting Goods? They're not selling AR pattern rifles anymore.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, okay, shit, I already forgot about that.
There's so many Dicks in your life, I can't just say Dick's. I have to say Dick's Sporting Goods. So,
exactly. Because it's like, well, what dick was that? You know? No.
So here's the thing. It's reported Dick's they're going to virtue signal and they're going to cut up all these guns because they're not going to sell them. And like, you know, everybody's like, what a waste of money. What a poor business model. And everybody's getting a turn to say they're bullshit. And I saw that. Look, I'm a businessman and I fucking saw that. And I was like, bullshit. This whole fucking article is fake. This whole headline is fake. This entire storyline is fake. Let me tell everybody at home what's really happening here. Dick's is a retailer. They buy from distributors, wholesale, either directly from the manufacturer or from a distributor. And part of the reason when you buy stuff wholesale is you agree to certain terms. You get discounts. You buy in bulk. There's timing. This has to be delivered by this time. We pay you by this. If it's 1 day late, there's a penalty, and it's all this stuff. And the incentivization, they're incentivized to do this because you're getting a break. Now, all of a sudden, Dick's decides we're going to stop selling these fucking guns, and they try to send them back to either to the wholesaler or to the manufacturer, and they're like, well, you can give us the guns back, but nowhere in this contract does it say you get to change your mind when we filled the terms of the contract. We made everything to spec. It's all perfect, and you've already paid for it. You have the product, and not only do we have the money, we've spent the money. You're not getting the money back. And so Dick's is like, oh, well, we're not going to get the money back. We're not going to sell these off to somebody. Who are we going to sell them to? So we're going to destroy them. And then that's where even you were like, that is a huge pain in the ass because now you have to prove to the ATF that you destroyed them.
Yeah, and here's the other thing, because Dick's has these firearms on the book. When you destroy them, then you have to get a hold of the ATF and show them the destroyed parts before you can dispose of them, because you can't just destroy them and tell the ATF, hey, I destroyed all these and throw them away.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because as a retailer, you as a consumer, if you own a gun, you can do whatever you want to it. It's out in the wild. But if you have an FFL and that shit's on your FFL book, it has to be accounted for. You just can't say, oh, they're destroyed. It doesn't work like that. The ATF is like, I want to see it. Show me.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at all the Dicks, truthfully, it's not even really Dicks. It's the other Field and Stream stores have, because Dick stopped selling AR-style rifles after Sandy Hook.
That's what I had thought.
Yeah, so but Dick's also owns Field and Stream, and they're the ones that sold the AR rifles. But I'm sure there's firearms that Dick's Sporting Goods sells that they probably decided they're not going to sell anymore for whatever reason. But they didn't sell any AR-style rifles. But they're also, I guess, talking about like they're not selling high-capacity magazines, i.e., like 30-round AR mags or AK mags or whatever the hell they sell. So I guess they're going to destroy them too, which if that's the case, that's no big deal. It's just destroying the merchandise, disposing of it, and writing it off on your taxes.
Yeah, but, you know, you still have to, that is such a pain in the ass to destroy this stuff. And so it makes sense.
Oh, well, but here's the thing.
No way to do this.
If you look at all the firearms that they pulled off the shelf on all their stores nationwide, I don't know the number, but it's got to be in the thousands.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be 900. I don't know. Maybe.
Okay. You know what? Let's say it's 500. You know, let's just say it's 500. I think that's low, but let's say it is. So now all of a sudden, you have to pay someone to properly dispose of these firearms by cutting them up, because you can't just have some, you know, minimum wage lackey go out there in the back warehouse with a hacksaw and cut them up. They have to be cut up and destroyed to spec.
Because they're on a book and they just don't get to float around.
Yeah. So now they have to contact a company
that's bonded
to come in and, you know, and do this work. I mean, you know, honestly, the decision to destroy these firearms will cost Dick's Sporting Goods. Hell, it'll cost them $1 million.
I mean, when labor and legal and compliance, yeah. There's a lot of man hours in compliance on this. And I saw this story, and I was like, this is a bunch of horse shit, this story. And it's like, I can't believe that even like the regular, like the conservative media didn't even go, well, this is what they're reporting and this is my analysis. Why does John1911 have to be the only real analysis on this? Because this is so obvious to me. I literally, like, I erupted when you sent that to me. I was like, that's bullshit. What the fuck is this fake fucking story? You know? Yeah, well, they didn't choose to do that. They're fucking they're jammed up on it.
Well, and here's the other side of this story. They announced they're going to do it. I want to see photographs of the destroyed product, because I don't necessarily know if they're not going to backdoor sell these guns to another distributor or something. Because it would be cheaper.
Possible.
Because it would be cheaper and easier, but yet they still get the PR. Oh, yeah, we destroyed these guns. Well, by destroy, you mean sold them?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, this could just be a big PR release just to prove a point, and then when they look at the economics of it and the compliance issues, they're like, well, maybe RSR will take them.
Well, you know what? We got a small distributor, like, you know, I don't know, like J&G or AIM Surplus or something like that, you know, where they're not super small, but they're big enough to be able to handle the purchase, but yet they're not, you know, huge. You know, you put in the contract, we'll sell you these at this much money, even if they take a loss, because they can write the loss off. We'll sell you these at this much money to get them off of our books, transfer them to you. But in the contract, just put it there. You can't disclose who you purchased them from.
That is entirely possible. That's still going to happen, because that is 10 times easier than the compliance issues to destroy these guns.
It is, because even if they look, okay,
and
they're going to.
Even if these guns, here's the thing: these guns are in. I mean, unless they're all centrally warehoused already. I mean, this is just. I mean, it's like, this is such a horseshit story. It's like, this is a pain in the dick.
Yeah, because these guns are scattered all over the United States, you know. So, so when, you know, you ship them back to their whatever distribution center, and then they have to go to whoever's going to destroy them, it's a lot easier saying, okay, and all the guns that we pulled off the shelf in this district or region we'll sell to this guy over here, and these guns in this district and region we can sell to these guys over here, and they can spread it out, sell them. Even, like I said, even if they sell them at a loss, you know, it's a write-off.
Well, here's the thing too. But even from a destruction standpoint, this is still probably being negotiated. Because, okay, let's make this argument simple so it makes sense to the listener. Let's say, Dick's, I'm like the super dick, okay? So like my analogy, I'm the super dick, and so Dick's corporate has determined that all these guns have to come to me. Marky, I am Chief Super Dick, and I'm the guy responsible for handling the compliance of negotiating and getting rid of these guns. Okay, so we find somebody, Big Bob's bonded warehouse, that has the ability to touch the deal with these guns, and they'll even do the compliance with the ATF. They have it's all worked. It's fine. So, okay, what's the definition of destruction? Are you telling me that I have to cut the lower receiver? Can I strip the lower receivers for lower parts kits? Can I keep the uppers? Or are you saying we have to cut the uppers, cut the lowers, and start cutting in the stuff, cutting the barrels? Well, that's also more work. What's your definition of destruction, Mr. Dick? Because that's more money. I think you make a good point. I don't even know if this is even settled yet.
Well, here's another way they can cover their ass on the PR standpoint. So what you do is you sell off the firearms to whoever can take them. But there's a long list of things that they're not going to sell anymore. I don't off the top of my head remember what it was, but it was like a 12, 15 item list of things that they weren't going to sell anymore. So again, let's go back to the high capacity magazines. So every Dick's store and Field and Stream store has a bunch of AR-15 magazines in their inventory. So just like any retailer, when you have to dispose of merchandise, and anyone in the retail business knows this, before you write it off and throw it away, you destroy it. You damage it to where it's not usable. That's what you're supposed to do. So again, you take your minimum wage flunky out in the back warehouse with the hammer, you bash up all the items that are non-firearm items, destroy them, record them as, your damaged or destroyed merchandise. You write them off on your taxes. It's out of your inventory, but yet you have, quote unquote, still destroyed the products that you're not selling anymore. Might not have been the actual firearm, but it could have been the other accessories that they're not selling anymore.
Yeah, it depends on how far you want to go for the smoke and mirrors play. And look, in Dick's defense, I mean, if I worked at Dick's and this is our position, and I have to balance my corporate image with my corporate decisions and going forward, if I'm going to have to take it up the ass on these financially, I'm going to at least leverage that for PR. We're going to virtue signal this to the end of time because at least I can get something out of it. That has, that's free advertising to all the people that never buy guns but may buy soccer balls. That okay, at least that's worth some value. So I mean, I don't completely think that Dick's is wrong in their decision to how they want to handle their property that they own. And I don't even necessarily agree with the logic that they're using. I just find that the stories that are being presented with no real critical analysis or questioning of Dick's as to how or why or when or where, how this is going to happen, I suspect this isn't going to happen. I think this is not, I don't, all of a sudden, CDNN, AIM, J&G, and all these other places pop up with lower
Bushmaster and Rugers and
brand new lower parts kits and unused uppers all day. I mean, even if they destroy them, it's like they're getting the money out of them. I mean, we'll see. What's the definition of destroyed? Dick's Firearms? You mean you destroyed your guns, but you contributed to the ghost gun idea? I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, if I worked at, they're dancing on thin ice here. And this whole story just is fake as fuck.
Yeah. Hey, and I still question the fact that they're going to destroy all these firearms because, again, from an ATF paperwork, it's just a nightmare. Yeah. But anyway.
Hey, we had talked about this off pod, and I didn't talk about it publicly because I didn't want to step on my own dick with it. But we had discussed the possibility of buying some bump fire stocks because we had theorized that by having a bump fire stock, that might reopen the NFA to machine guns post 86. So we were thinking about buying some just to have them, just in case an opportunity presented itself to have a post 86, but pre 2019 machine gun. Because how you're going to define these? Because my fear was my argument was they're not going to, if they crack open the NFA, you're into changing it, and they may not want to risk that. So anyway, long story short, SlideFire, the company that makes a lot of these bump stocks, they've announced that they're going to be shutting down operations, I guess. Either they've shut down or they're going to shut down at the end of the month, maybe end of next month.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But we never bought any, and I'm just not that interested in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the whole bump stock thing is stupid. I never really was fond of them, but it's like, well, if we can get one at a decent price, I wouldn't mind throwing one in the armory just for shits and giggles to have. Even though I disagreed with your whole analogy on it, but I thought, well, you know what though, for short money, it wouldn't hurt to curb your bet, because if you're right, it's nice to. If you're right, it's nice to have one. If you're wrong, it's like, well, it's no big deal. We'll always be able to get our money out of it if we can even sell it.
Yeah.
So, but we never got around to actually looking for one. So I guess it's a moot point.
Yeah, it's a moot point, and we're probably not going to do it. So, but you know what? I have decided I've never bump fired a gun before. I mean, let me say this. As a 1911 shooter with really light triggers, I've bumped fired 1911s by accident. I've even done it on video. But I probably will take some of our guns out and try to figure out learn how to bump fire myself. I admit I don't know how to do it. I mean, I know the theory behind it, but I've never done it because it's just not something. But now it's like, well, I think I out of principle, I need to learn how to bump fire.
Yeah.
You can,
why not?
You teaching me how? I'm sure you bump fired. I'm sure you can bump fire. I'm sure you could bump fire a goddamn orange.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay, all right. Hey, we've been going really long, so I want to end this on I like to do the police blotter ending.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
what do you got?
This one, it's a horrible story. And I told you this a long time ago, and it's not politically correct to say it, but I'm going to say it now because it fits into the story. I have a theory, and I can't justify it logically. It's more of an emotional theory, but one of my theories is, and I'm going to offend some people, I don't mean to, and I'm not saying I even believe it, but it's just something that's in my head. I have always questioned men that want to spend time with other people's kids. Does that make any sense? I find it a little. I'm like, I'm not saying it's a sure thing.
What do you mean? I mean, like, you question me wanting to spend time with my neighbor's kids, or me wanting to spend time with my grandkids?
No, like your neighbor's kid, like not you, but I mean, but just like guys that their whole life is their whole life is about being around kids.
They don't have kids of their own, so they hang out with other people's kids, you mean?
See, like, again, my theory doesn't...
Or do you mean, like, soccer coaches?
It's a sexist, bigoted theory that I don't even ascribe to, because logically I can't prove it, but there's a part of the back of my mind, some little, like, warning light that goes off, where I'm like, I just need to, maybe I should check this twice. Just to make sure, like, because, like, it's really in the, So anyway, I'm setting out to tell this. This came out of Nashville. There's a man. He's been convicted. He got 100 years. He got 100 years. He wasn't eligible. He got 100 years for taking pornographic images of children that he would babysit. It's like, well, okay. He got 105 years. Jarrett A. Turner. And, okay, it's like, great, another one of these dirtbag stories. And, he was babysitting some kids. He was a guy, and, like, he's 36. It's like, okay, why a 36-year-old man is babysitting other people's kids.
That in itself is kind of weird, but
that's, you know,
okay.
I mean, but like, I can understand emergencies, like, oh my God, you know, can you watch my kids? We're a neighbor. I mean, don't hang me on the noose of my thing. It's just like one of those little, like, reptilian things in the back of my head that goes, well, check this out. Guess what his full-time job was?
What?
He liked to dress. He was a window washer, but his shtick is he loved to dress up as Spiderman and go to the local children's hospital.
Oh, he was doing a John Wayne Gacy.
He was doing a John Wayne Gacy, and he was putting himself in a position to be around kids. And I hate to say it, and if again, no disrespect, because you know there's a lot of men out there. Because this is the thing, my mind. This is how my mind works. Like, I even think about this, and I think it's a logical conclusion. Like, part of me says, maybe I should go and become the things that I don't much care to do just so I can make sure that the kids are okay. Like, I would never want to be like a softball coach. But then part of my mind is, I better fucking go there and be a softball coach to make sure these fuck faces don't touch any of these kids, because I will shoot them in the fucking head. You know what I mean? Because that's how my mind works. And it's part of my reptilian brain, you know, that, again, I'm not justifying it. I don't act on it. But it's like, grown-ass man dressing as Spider-Man. And, again, it makes me feel bad, because part of me would be like...
Okay, you know, but in all fairness, someone has to be the coach.
I know.
Okay,
I know.
Now, if the coach,
I'm not talking about the coach. I'm just talking about the kid. I'm not talking about the coach. I'm talking about the Spider-Man guy. And I guess what I'm saying is, I guess it's part of my thing in my brain, or I say to myself, because I'm not really incentivized to, that's not something that appeals to me. But part of me says, if you want something done right, I guess I'm going to have to do it myself. Kind of like people that don't want to be politicians, but they end up having to do it because their politicians are fucking communists. And part of me's like, I wonder how many other men feel like I do. They're like, my goal in life is not to grow up to be a scout leader or to be a softball coach or to be a track coach or be whatever. But apparently, if I don't do this, the crazy Spider-Man guys are going to show up and try to abuse kids. So maybe I better just fucking do it.
But on the other side of that coin, you get like the Shriners who dress up in their clown outfits and they go to the Shriners Children's Hospital and the burn ward and the cancer ward and they entertain the kids. And they're just there being good guys because that's what they do.
And I don't disagree. And again, I'm not saying I'm not even making the argument. I'm not making a logical argument. I'm only basically revealing a character flaw in the very deepest recesses of my reptilian brain that it's like, like, okay. But you know what? Even within that spectrum, I could easily see a bunch of Shriners, hey, it's time to go down and do this and do that. But you know what? After a couple hours, they're like, okay, I'm done. And, you know, part of me be like, okay, you know what I mean? Whereas, like, the guy that seems like, no, I'm going to stay here all night with Johnny. Why? Go the fuck home. There's no shit here. What's wrong with you? Fuck you. And so that's my reptilian brain.
I get it.
That's my reptilian brain that, like, you know, and I wish there were more. I just wonder, like, am I alone in thinking like that? Am I, like, crazy? Or am I, I don't.
Look,
or,
I mean,
you've got grandkids, and I don't know, like.
Yeah, I know. I know.
Am I making sense, or do I sound like a lunatic? I probably sound like a lunatic.
You pretty much sound like a lunatic, but the proof is in the pudding. The dude was dressing up as Spider-Man, and he is doing 105 years in prison for it. So, I mean, you know, but what I think it is, I think he is an exception to the rule, not the rule, because you can't lump all, you know, sport coaches and people that are genuinely wanting to bring a little bit of happiness to these sick kids into their life. I mean, they don't, they're in the hospital, they're sick for whatever reason, and you have people come around with the therapy dogs, and then you have, people come around as, dressed as Santa Claus at Christmas time, Easter Bunny at Easter time. Hopefully it's not the creepy Easter Bunny costume, because most of them are, but, I mean, there's more, there's, I'm going to say 99.99999% of the people doing that are doing it out of the goodness of their own heart, not to take porno pictures of these sick kids.
And I'm not making that argument that they are. All I'm saying is I can certainly understand the need to occasionally audit these situations. Kind of like, like a doctor who has a female patient, so maybe he has a nurse come into the room with him. Part of me is just like, if something in your brain, for some reason that you can't, if you're around people, and at least I'm only speaking for me, if something that for some reason I can't explain it, I can't justify it, I can't make it work as like a mathematical equation, but there's a little thing in the back of my brain going, warning, 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 I follow that warning. Because I go, this is how I feel about stuff. If I see something that strikes me wrong, I'm like, what's going on here? Well, I will audit that. And I think if more people did that, I think we would have less of this bullshit.
In full disclosure, my primary physician is a female doctor, and generally she does not have a nurse in the office with her. But when she does, it's a female nurse, so I'm okay with that too. Wow, it's like double dance night whenever you go to the doctor. Okay, all right. Yeah, it is.
This wraps up episode 93 of the John1911 Podcast. If you like this extremely long podcast and want to see some pictures of the stuff we're referencing, go to our blog page, John1911.com. It's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. Everybody, have a good day.
See you later.